everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Doug, along with Brad.
Hello.
And kind of keeping up, I think both me and Brad recently played some of these smaller Switch games. I recently played through Celeste, and Brad recently played through Golf Story, a game I was very interested in because I am a big fan of golfing games. Well, just Hot Shots.
I was wondering where you're going with that because golf isn't your thing,
No.
and I'm thinking I don't think you've ever broken down and played like Tiger Woods
Oh
PGA
God, I'll
Tour.
never play a real golf game. No, no game that I have to swing with a stick. Wait, do you have to swing with a stick in this one?
No, it's the Hot Shots 3-button start, power, accuracy.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So Brett is going to talk about Golf Story. So I think Golf Story. I think we were both kind of like weirdly anticipating this game because it looked like it was sort of like a general JRPG, like walk around towns and stuff, but with golf mechanics. So I guess
Yep.
I think that's a thing that you can go like a lot of different places if it's done well. So. Were your expectations met? I guess playing this with getting that sort of JRPG experience while playing a golf game.
Yeah, it's very much a top-down RPG style game, but instead of fighting stuff, you play golf.
Mm-hmm.
So there you'll hit in an argument with somebody, and you'll be like, let's go settle this.
Yeah.
And then you'll play like 2 holes of golf, and you got to beat them in golf. And then it'll be like, hey, I noticed that these things are missing. Can you go return them? And you return them by hitting golf balls at things.
So,
And that goes into like a whole bunch of really weird directions. Like there's, like the normal haunted area, and they're trying to raise the dead. And there's skeletons, and you have to hit their eyeballs into the skeletons to make the skeletons alive.
oh god dang it! You know what this sounds like? Is I used to really really love adventure pinball games, and it sounds like that same sort of thing where you have like here's like a really standard mechanic, and let's make it silly.
Yeah, pretty much. Where it's like, yep, you need to do this, but how can we do that while hitting golf balls at things? And that's pretty much what this game does, is it takes all that stuff and it just goes, we're going to solve all our problems by hitting golf balls and stuff.
So I guess if we look at like from two different standards of like one being a good golf game and two being a good RPG. Like, okay, I guess it is a golf game compared. I guess Hot Shots. That's the only one I really play. I don't know if you play any other ones. Like, how would you say as a golf game? How'd you like those sort of mechanics?
It works well. The only issue with this, it's been so long since I've played a golf game from this perspective, like going back to like some of the, I feel like the Game Boy Mario golf games had kind of that top-down perspective. The only issue with it that I have is the greens. It ends up kind of becoming a game of like, if I just hit it hard enough, hopefully I can avoid the slope arrow, because the slope is just like a directional arrow,
Okay.
and then it just says slight or medium or something like that to tell you. So like you'll be standing, and again the camera's pretty much top down, so you'll be standing there, the hole will be in front of you, it'll tell you it's 10 yards and it slopes down, but you don't really have that ability like in Hot Shots to kind of read it, look at it, and go, okay, I know how this is going.
Oh,
It's just kind of a guessing game with it. So that gets a little bit frustrating. The rest all works really, really well.
so it doesn't show, because I know like in I guess Hot Shots is the only like one I really have a frame reference for. It shows you kind of that profile view of like kind of sort of like a cross section, so you don't get that.
No, it just looks like a big green patch, and it just tells you which way it's going.
Oh, bummer. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that is a little bit, especially once you get towards the end of the game, a little dicey, just because it's kind of going like, okay, I guess I'm going to put it here and hope that works. The beginning game, it's always pretty much, unless you're, on the other side of the green, you can just kind of hit it at the right amount and it'll go in. But it does get a little bit frustrating towards the end. But the actual green or tee to green, so your fairways, your bunkers, all that stuff plays really well. Again, similar to a Hot Shots game where, you've got your different clubs and it'll tell you where you're going to land. You've got to kind of factor in wind and bounce, which that works all fine. It's just that matter of that green trying to read it that messes with you.
Okay, so I mean, like, I feel like when I'm playing Hot Shots, like I have a general idea where my ball is going to go. Do you like feel confident like at the end of the game, like I got this, or just because that slope thing kind of just affects everything?
Oh no, I would say I have it 95% of the time. It's just those trickier greens. Those are the only ones where it gets a little bit kind of hairy as to what's going to happen. The rest is all very much, you can adjust shot length, you can kind of pick your spot, you can do all that kind of stuff like you would in a Hot Shots game. There's some elevation changes which are just kind of shown kind of in the same, you can tell elevation change in a 2D game just by kind of getting that weird little like step up type picture. So there's a few things like that. And all of that stuff I think is done fine. It really is the only issue I had with the core golf gameplay is that green towards the end of the game where it's kind of all
Oh,
over the
okay.
place.
All right. So, well, I mean, that's cool because I was a little bit concerned because I just feel like if I don't like I just like hot shots as far as golfing games go. So if it has a similar one, then I'm actually kind of excited. So I guess then it's like okay, so now we're like looking at an RPG and everything that's like. I mean, it's all golf related, obviously, but like trying to separate out like the golf aspects of it. Like, is it just like an interesting game with like interesting characters or like funny characters or a good plot? Like, I imagine you're not like hitting a golf ball into God's face at the end like a Final Fantasy game.
Maybe. No, you're definitely not. Basically, what the story is you are kind of you're this guy who's gone through some rough stuff, doesn't seem like he's in necessarily a good place, and decides I'm going to be a golfer again, and I'm going to become a pro.
Okay. Yeah.
So it starts out kind of with like your dad teaching you how to golf. So that's kind of your tutorials when you're a little kid, and then it jumps to like 20 years later or something, and you're like, oh, I haven't played golf in a while, and I've got nothing better to do. I guess I'll try and become a pro golfer. And the story that goes through is pretty interesting just because you've got, a lot of kind of those typical RPG characters in there. You've got, your mentor character who's kind of like hesitant, but like sees your potential, but is hesitant about it. You've got your rival who never really admits that you're better than them, even after you've beaten them 3 or 4 times. You've got like the cocky, overblown, like antagonist character who's just like, I'm the best there is, and you're not gonna beat me, and da da da. So it falls into a lot of those things, and it's just interesting to see them done in a different light, just because the setting is you're kind of on this island, and you just go to the different golf courses, and like, oh yeah, there's somebody over at whatever golf course. Why don't you go check it out, see what they're doing over there? Just like you wouldn't, and you go to like a different town, and there's new characters there. There's new side quests to do. There's new just different little twists on mechanics. So like one of them is like the ice area, and the people all forgot to drink their hot cocoa, so they got frozen, and you have to light golf balls on fire and hit the people who are encased in ice with golf balls that are on fire to melt them and save them.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's these weird little things, and it's interesting because every area you go to has these weird little quirks to it, and as you go through there, just seeing the different ways that they're playing with this golf mechanic, because I mean, you literally, the tutorial is basically the whole game is just, you hit your 3 buttons to golf, and it's just playing around with those mechanics a little bit to do things that really makes it interesting. The characters themselves, I think, are fine. They're nothing super interesting, but interesting enough. The main character, you're just like player is what it says whenever you like sign, like you're on a card or whatever. It has some interesting stuff in terms of like background history of some characters, and again, that kind of that RPG aspect of always being overlooked. Like the main character is always seeming like, oh, I'm not necessarily like, for some reason people are more interested in the people around me than me.
Okay.
You get that a lot, which is kind of plays into it a little bit once you get towards the end. That gets pretty interesting, but lots of just weird little quirky stuff that's just fun. It's just one of those games that as you're playing it, like you're having fun, just because whether it's good golf mechanics, goofy characters, just some weird thing that you're doing for some reason, it just always is entertaining.
So why is this not a perfect? I mean, like all of that sounds like great. Like that sounds like exactly kind of what I wanted from the game. So like what holds it what holds it back from like why is nobody talking about this game like everybody's talking about Celeste or some of the other like those big games, other smaller games?
I think it ultimately just comes down to it is just a golf game. And I think just with the mechanics that it has, that's never really gonna set the world on fire in a way, just because it's okay. Golf games haven't evolved a whole lot since the mid 90s. Most of them are still doing the same 3-button clicking thing. So there's that. It is one of those games where you can definitely tell where there's filler parts. And I think that always tends to get in the way of people really enjoying a game. I know it does for me, and especially towards the end, I think I started skipping a lot more of the side quests towards the beginning. I was like, oh, these are all kind of goofy and fun, and then you're kind of like, okay, these are all goofy and fun, but I'm just hitting a golf ball at this. And the game took me about 15 hours, so 15 hours of just playing golf.
Yeah, okay.
Does get a little bit repetitive, so I think that's one of the things with this was where that golf mechanic is, in one way, its biggest drawback, but also one of those its most unique and most important feature. So having that whole RPG aspect hinders the fact that, okay, a golf game I'm not going to sit down and play for 15 hours a lot of times. But if this were just an RPG and it was just normal combat, it wouldn't necessarily be as interesting. So it's one of those weird, like
22 things.
it's a solid C, but because it's like you get that stuff mixed in, it's like
Okay.
elevated. But it's one of those weird things where you've got like an average to above average
Yeah.
story RPG type thing, and an average to an above average golf thing, and then you're putting them together, and you're kind of like, okay, well, they're not necessarily always complementing each other in the best way
So I
possible.
mean, like, so what is Golf Story? Okay, so then if like, what is Golf Story 2 to get to that point, or is it just inherent to the genre that it's in?
I think ultimately, like again, I think the biggest thing is just I think finding a way to keep it fresh. So like, there's disc golf in
Yeah.
this, but that's completely relegated to a side thing. Like you can do it once and never go back
Okay.
to it. And there's just I think it's just more that things like that. There's lawn bowling at one point, which you do once and never come back to. So I almost think it's that integration of like, okay, we know what Golf Story is. Let's mess around with it a little bit more. Let's try and make this a little bit more engaging as you go throughout. And honestly, at times, even just doing some of the side quest things, which a lot of them are hit the ball into this circle, and this circle just happens to be around skeletons, or this circle just happens to be around people frozen in ice, or whatever it may be
Yeah.
this time. And towards the end, especially, you get to the point where you're just like, I just want to play around a
Yeah.
golf because a lot of it is that walking around doing side quest stuff, and even to get to the main points in there, you have to do that side quest stuff, and a lot of times just like just play another round of golf. Let's play another round of
Mhm.
golf. Also, there's a murder mystery part in the middle that doesn't work.
That does not work.
Doesn't work. It's about 8 hours in, and it's one of these like the RPG cliche of like, well, if you get me this, then you can do this. Then you go to that guy. He's like, oh, well, I'll give you that if you
Yeah,
get
yeah,
me
yeah.
this. And but it's set up that way, like this like weird like you're locked in this house and you can't find this person and they think he's been murdered and like you need to solve the murder and it's like, oh, well, if you get this, it'll distract this person who will walk away from there. And if you hide
Oh,
under the
yeah,
table,
yeah.
you can listen to their and you're just kind of like running in circles for like an hour and it
Cut
just
out the
doesn't
filler
work.
arcs.
That would be the other thing. That actually is probably the biggest thing. It was one of those I was like, yeah, I feel like there was something that, and I was like, oh god, yes, that whole hour I blocked out.
So I mean, like, I guess, like, to me, like, I guess the next step for me, like, I would love for them to like go deeper. Like, I imagine you're not hitting a golf ball into the face of like a god demon at the end, but I think, would you like to see the series just get wackier, or does it get wacky
well,
enough?
well, that's the thing is that this game is set in a very realistic
Oh,
tone,
okay, yeah.
and then it does those wacky things like
Oh,
the basic concept is that like you need to play through these courses so that you can gain all the things you need to gain to get to the pro tour. So it's like you need to play through this to get better clubs and you need to go to this club and get an endorsement from
yeah,
this
yeah,
person to be able to go to this next club so that that club is where the pro tour happens, or you need to go and sign a deal with an agent to get noticed. Like it's all that grounded stuff. There's never that weird like crazy RPG over the top thing
yeah.
that you would get. So it's really grounded. It just happens to like in the side quest sprinkle in these like really weird
Gotcha.
things.
Dang. I was kind of hoping it'd get a little crazy, like the agent is actually Satan or something like that. I don't know. Weird JRPG mechanics, weird JRPG stuff. No.
No. Like it is just you trying to be a good golfer. But again, there's interesting parts thrown in there where you're like find out about your character's backstory and the
Yeah.
side character's backstory, and they're all interesting people in different ways. But it doesn't have that crazy RPG at the end. You're killing God and doing whatever
After
else.
like 3 towns have been destroyed. All
Yeah, none of that.
right. Well, I mean, so it sounds like it. So just final thoughts. Pretty good game.
Yeah, I think me it works just because I like
Yeah.
golf and I like golf games and I like RPGs. So I think it's one of those things where if you're just in it for the golf, this you can do this quick play matches, but I think the RPG elements might get in the way of somebody who's just here for a
Yeah.
golf game because there's a lot of weird RPG stuff you got to do, and I think the people who are just here for an RPG stuff might just get sick of the golf mechanics. So it's one of those, like I said, kind of that catch-22. You're doing something cool, but it's not necessarily something that's going to cater to a
But if
lot
you
of
like
people.
golf and RPGs, then you're golden.
Right in the sweet
All right.
spot.
We are Workforce Gaming. If you guys like what you heard, you can follow us at Workforce Gaming on Twitter and subscribe to us whatever you're listening to us on. See you guys next week.
See ya.